Greetings, listeners, and welcome to the Care Table podcast, dedicated to educating and supporting family caregivers of aging loved ones. I'm your host, Amy Huddleston. Through insightful interviews from both industry experts and family caregivers, we aim to provide valuable perspectives and resources. Let's see who we're learning from today. Hi, welcome today. I am super excited to have our guest, Samantha Stearns from Songbird Transitions with us. I've known her for 10 years at least now, and also just think she is a ray of sunshine, which you're going to see in this conversation. Sam and her husband, Luke, have co-owned and founded Songbird Transitions, where they have helped for almost 10 years now over 700 families downsize and move. So she's clearly an expert in this field. She's very passionate about it. It's a sensitive subject, as many people know, when you are talking about moving mom and dad, whether they want to or not. So we're going to talk with Sam today about just the emotional side of it, the planning that goes into it, and actually what a full service moving and downsizing company like Songbird Transitions does. So Sam, let's start with that, of just when you say that's what you do, what does that mean?
Right. And it's always different. That's like the hardest part, when we go in and we meet a family, they've typically lived in their home for multiple decades. So 20 years, our longest is we had a client who bought his home on his 18th birthday, and he'd been in his home 63 years. And he was moving to a senior living community. So every client's a little bit different, which is why we offer services that are a la carte. People can pick and choose. And as you know, adult age children don't necessarily live in the same town as their loved ones anymore. So we were kind of born out of that, if you will, because we wanted to be able to be that extended family member. We're just like, we're here, we're help, we'll get you through this. And so what that means is that we can help them completely relocate. So full service move management, in the sense that we help them pick and choose what furnishings will fit in their space and make it still look and feel like the home that they've loved and lived in for multiple decades. And then we can do the relocation, whether we partner with a third-party mover or we actually use our box truck and vans to move them. And we set up. And when we set up, we set up your kitchen, we set up your closets, we set up the bathroom exactly as it was and how they're used to it being in the space. And we hang artwork, all of the tchotchkes in the china cabinet. We take pictures and we set it up exactly the same way.
Oh my goodness. I love hearing that.
That's the move. And then when they notice it, it's amazing. When we do a little reveal, our little HGTV reveal, they notice it. They know that their Yardrow or Hummels are in the exact same space as it was, at the home that they lived in. And so that's just the move, that is the move part of the transition. And then we can go back to the house that they had lived in and manage as much or as little of the entire clear out of the home. So we always say family first, whether that needs to, we need to deliver a cedar chest east of the Mississippi all the way to New Jersey, or if we need to ship items, to South Florida, or whatever the case may be. If there's family items that they want, we will help them navigate relocating those items. And then we say, okay, if we can sell it, or if a vendor would buy it, or if it should go to auction, we'll get those items to auction, or, a consignment store, whichever is the most suitable fit and for what the item is. And then we do a lot of donations. And then as it's kind of inevitable when you've lived in a house, even 3 years, there's trash, and we clear that out as well. So those are our local services. Very long-winded. I'm sorry.
No, I had no idea that you did all of that. I would assume then that means you have created relationships with people like an auction appraiser.
Yes.
And
yeah.
Okay.
One of my favorite, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, go.
One of my favorite things that we do, the house we lived in, when we first moved here, there was a ton of foster youth down the street, and they would age out of the foster care system. And so I ran over to the mom and I was like, wait, what's going on? Enlighten me, and she informed me that, they age out of the foster care system at 18. And I was like, but they don't have anything. And she's like, just the clothes on their back. So we found a partnership through her with an organization so that we can furnish apartments for youth that have aged out of foster care. And so that actually helps our clients purge. They love that. They're like,
I
yes,
just got
take the
chills.
oak. Yes, take the oak desk, take the oak dresser. Can you take a king size bed? I'm like, no, their apartments aren't usually that large, but we try and rehome what we can. And we've just tried to create really great connections with organizations that people are passionate about, whether it's the Humane Society, there's a thrift store that all proceeds benefit the Humane Society. So we just try and be a single point of contact for people and have the motto that every problem solvable and work through it for families.
So I would love to know, which I'm sure is a loaded question, what's the most challenging part of your job?
The psychology, obviously. I always talk, people are like, oh, you own a moving company. It's like, that's not what we do. It is part of what we do. But there is so much psychological support that has to happen in this life transition. It's not just a home transition, it's a life transition. And I always say it needs a lot of love. And my team's amazing. I adore them. They are willing to listen to all the stories about the sentimental pieces. As you can imagine, we're dealing with a lot of sentimental items. And you don't usually have the same amount of square footage, obviously, in a downsized space. So we can't keep everything. And so it's a lot of support in that way. And it's important to make this a joy-filled process, which is what I love, celebrating the life that our clients have led. It gives back to us in ways that we never imagined. And it's also really important to make this a positive experience and kind of see that this is life-giving in the sense that it's a celebration of the next chapter, not a depressing thing. A lot of times when I first meet people, they say, you're going to make me get rid of all my stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm going to help you find the things you want to keep. And they kind of go,
It's a mindset shift,
yeah, yeah.
but I'm sure they really appreciate that. And I mean, I love that you, and I know you, but I know that that is so front of mind for you and how that makes you successful in this role, because I learned that doing home care, people didn't even want a caregiver in their home. So I can't even imagine the psychology and the emotion that goes with, I now have to leave this home. Like that gentleman, for instance, that you said that had lived there for so long, and to say, now we're going to go through your things and figure out what you want to keep, and how that's just so difficult. And I'm curious, and I'm sure every move is different because you've got people that have different size houses and they have lots of different, you've got hoarders, I assume, because we had some of those clients. Um, I'm curious to know kind of timeline. If someone's wondering, okay, if I did contact a company like Songbird Transitions, how long should I expect this to take?
So I always live with kind of the idea that it's never too soon to call. And because I think what happens is that psychological buildup, that like overwhelm that like weights them down, you know what I mean? Like a weighted blanket where they just start to feel overwhelmed because they go down to their basement and they look at it and they're like, no way. And they turn around and they go back and they're just debilitated in a lot of ways. A lot of families are, especially, we have 80, 90-year-old clients and they're like, I can't physically even move this stuff. So why do I need to process it, in my brain, in my head?
I can't do that with my own basement. It's so weird.
Right.
What you just said about me, I'm like, that's me right
Oh,
now. Yeah. I'm like, I go down there and I'm like, yeah, no. I
yeah,
mean,
no, exactly. I
no,
love it. It's so Midwestern. I love the way we talk. It's like, yeah, no, yeah,
no. So I can understand. And then if you add the physical, limitations, I would say, you don't have the energy you used to, you don't have the strength you used to.
no. Right.
So, okay. So
So
you
to
got to
go,
assess
yeah,
that
correct.
first. Okay.
Back to your timeline question. It's never too early to call because you and I could go through our basements and we'll feel a million times better. So what I mean by that is people could get into their spaces that they're not living in anymore and process that. And then that weighted blanket just sort of starts to lift a little. And it's like, this purging isn't as painful as I thought. I've relocated something to a foster kid. You know what I mean? All of a sudden you're like, there's some positive reinforcement happening. This is more fun. Her team's really fun to work with. I want them to come back. You know what I
Okay.
mean? I mean, so it's because we want this to be such a positive process, I always say the sooner the better. However, a lot of times there's a diagnosis or cognitive decline is happening. And so we get contact and we're like, I need to move my mom like yesterday. What do we do? So then it's a abbreviated, we can make those things happen, usually with a few months notice. And the hardest thing is, and I've done this, the hardest thing is something happens, a fall happens or a stroke or, enough that they get to the doctor and the doctor says, you can't go home. There are stairs. And then I'm having to select furnishings for clients that I've never even met and trying to set up a space that I don't know what home feels like because I don't understand their habits of daily living, which is why I'll do it. And I'm like, I hope I hit this. I hope I got it right, and normally I go see them once they come into their new space. I'm like, is there anything I'm missing? Is there, do you sit at a different desk every day? Should I go get that instead? Those transitions happen, but that's when I'm just such an advocate for the proactive approach to this process instead of the reactive approach. So timeline could be a week turnaround, but that's not ideal,
Not, and I think it's such good. I'm telling you, every single person I've been talking to already, it's the same message of you can't start too soon.
Mm-hmm.
You can't call the elder law attorney too soon.
Right.
You can't start talking about what is it that mom and dad want. I really like the one thing I read online before I was preparing to talk to you is a great question, I think, to even ask your parents, which I could even ask my parents that are still very healthy, but where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I think that's a fair question. And I don't know if that's something, when you go and you meet with a family, how do you initiate that conversation where you're trying to get them to say, okay, yes, I'm open to this move?
Yeah. I think of my own parents with this as well. Nobody wants to talk about dying. And I think that that's the hardest part in this process is like, this isn't actually a conversation about that. This is a conversation about living. And I think that adult age children need to kind of I love to say, look with a lens of love, and you want to uphold your family's wishes. This isn't about like frantic emergency preparation, right? This is, I want to be informed so that I can do right by you. And it's okay that we talk about this so that I don't do something that you would have rather I'd handled differently. Because the last thing any adult age child wants to do is to have a misstep at this chapter. And people do, and they go back and they have all these regrets. And it's like, okay, if we talk about it and we say, what are your challenges right now? Is it 5 acres of property that you're dealing with? Is it the cleaning? Is it the bills? What are your challenges and how can I help? How can I assist you in this process? Is senior living the right choice so that we can manage A, B, and C of your pain points? Or is it aging in place and making sure we have certain people here to assist you so that you can stay home? I know you obviously as a former owner of Home Instead, you're like, okay, age in place, how can we assist there? And I get the luxury of seeing people move and thrive, and I'm like, moving is great, and we handle that differently.
Well, it works for them, and I think you actually just said that so beautifully that people, I wish they'd have these conversations. I think people like you and I that have worked in this industry for a long time, I'm not afraid to talk about death because I saw it every week. I mean, that was part of our life is in our profession. Unfortunately, we lost clients and it was difficult, but it makes you realize there is a cycle of life. We're all going to get there. Can't really avoid it. I think what you said is so perfect that if you can give your family the gift of saying, these are my wishes, this is what I would like with my property, or this is what I would like with my things, or I really would love my granddaughter to have this. If you could say that while you're mentally still capable, you're physically capable, it's such a gift. And you're not talking about death. You're just saying, here's how I feel inside. I've already told my kids that I love my husband dearly, but I know he will not want to take care of me if I have dementia. I love him, but I just know it's not going to be a good option. And so I've said, I'm okay that you move me. I'm okay that you do that. I want you to come visit me. I want you to hold my hand. And they look at me insane, but I'm actually happy that I'm in my right mind most of the time. And I can say, this is my wish right now. I am all right with you knowing that this is how I feel. And it's such a gift because I think the other thing you're giving when you're talking about these families is you're giving all the children a gift where they don't have to fight over it. They don't have to fight that this is what mom had wanted or dad. You already know these were their wishes. You may not agree with them, but this is what they wanted. So let's honor that. And I just think that is such a gift to families. So you must have these conversations. I
Yeah.
can't agree with you more. And I think you said it more beautifully than anyone I've ever heard say it.
Thank you.
I mean it. So,
My mom had a severe motorcycle accident the day after I graduated from college. I mean, it literally put us on this trajectory to be where we are. She is healthy and well, and
amen.
amen. Yes, absolutely. But it was something where totally normal one day and the next day not, And so I was 21, and was introduced to caregiving in a way I never thought imaginable. And I know we had the gift of time to be together because I was able to move home right away and assist with IVs, which is wild to kind of think about. And I adore my mom. We have a wonderful relationship, but it also made it safe to be like, whoo, okay, stuff happens. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about a plan. Let's not be afraid to think about possibilities, in this work. And we just want to do right by it, And it's a gift. It's a gift to feel confident in what to do and to honor, your loved ones. It really is.
I 1,000% agree with you. So I think obviously it sounds like one piece of advice is you can call sooner than you think.
Mm-hmm.
I can make that connection with you and say, Sam, I want you to come and just assess their home right now. And we do have a lot of stuff in the basement. So we want to just probably clean that out. So can we start there? That's an option. Okay, what I would love to know, I'm just curious, how in the world do you do that? Where in the world do you start?
So, I used to be an academic advisor, Amy, and I always would have these incoming freshmen. Carrie, stay with me. I'm going to get back to what
I'm with you. I'm with you.
It's so fun. You have these sweet, 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds come in and they're like, I don't know what I want to major in. And I'm like, that's okay. You know what you don't want to major in. Okay. And they're like, oh, I'd never thought about it that way. And it's like, all right, let's look at all these majors. Let's just cross out everything you don't want to do. And they're like, oh, this list is getting smaller. This is getting more manageable. Okay, I can approach the possibility of what these majors look like now that I've gotten rid of everything I know I don't want to do. So follow me back to senior downsizing.
I'm in the basement.
You're in the basement.
Okay.
Everybody tells me before I meet them, well, I don't know what I want to keep. And I'm like, that's okay. Let me just come see you. Let's just have a conversation. It just gives me a chance to kind of walk into your space. And they're like, okay. And I'm like, and then we can see if this is a good fit. You can see if you'll work well with me. I can see if I'll work well with you. And we'll go from there. And not kidding, we begin that family tour, that little house tour. It doesn't even have to be the basement, Amy. And they're like, oh, that was my mother's. I really, really like that piece. You know, that chair has seen better days. I'm good to let that go. And I'm like, boop, moment. Okay, let's head on down to the basement. Oh gosh, I haven't used this whole shelf in 3.5, 4 years. Actually, when we moved here 20 years ago, I put that box there. I'm like, okay, note to self. And then they're like, oh, that's my holiday decorations. I use those every year. But you know what? I should probably go through that one. Oh, okay. So where do I start? With the absolute no's. People know what they don't need or want to keep. They really do. They look at it something and they're like, that's at the end of its time, you know? And sometimes I look at it, I'm like, okay, I actually think I might have a vendor for that piece. Let me send a picture message over to my contact and see if she's interested in buying it from you. And they're like, really? You know, and then that's sort of how that goes. Or if I don't have a vendor for it and they're like, that's really worth something. And I'm like, okay, we could take it to auction if you really think so. But here's the reality of, you know, that scenario. Um, the tour, the consultation, the free consultation in person is everything, because they tell me they don't know what to keep, but they know what they don't want to keep. Just like you know what you don't want to major in. Do you know what
That's
I mean?
good. That's really good. Okay, so then after my free consultation,
Mhm.
what happens after that?
Well, some families need to move first because they don't want to be a part of the clear out. That part is hard, especially if they've lived somewhere a long time. So that's why we do things in an assortment of orders, because sometimes they need to move and then they're like, okay, I have everything I need. Go ahead and take care of the rest. And we go back and do the what we call estate dispersal services. Other times they need to be part of the process and they want to see things go and they want to clear it out. And what happens, I like to say, then the house, ooh, wait, let me switch that. Then the home starts to look more like a house and less like home. And they're like living in that. And then they're like, okay, this isn't home anymore. Let's move. So it really just depends on the person. You know, I love, love, love what we do. We have people that the senior population, and I think senior is a good thing. I feel like it means wisdom, it means knowledge, it means life, and there's just so much to celebrate in that. So I am not of the thinking that we need to stop saying the word senior, just to put that out there. But
I agree with you.
um, that senior population has also lived in a very different time than my own generation. And so the Depression era folks that grew up, the value of a dollar is totally different than me being able to jump on to Amazon and purchase something. And so that is a really important part of the work too. And I think that impacts how we're able to like get people to process and move things on. I sort of segued away, but
No, I love that you're mindful of that because you just reminded me, you know, when you that is a different generation. Their mindset is so different. I learned once, I actually was working as a caregiver to fill in, and I poured out the leftover coffee in the coffee pot that
dare
was
you.
yesterday. And that client was not happy with me. And I understood. I've read enough historical fiction, World War II books, and you know, to know don't throw out the coffee. I mean, she reheats it. She does not throw it out. So that mindset, I think that you have to acknowledge that. You can't say, oh, whatever. It matters to them. So it should matter to you. So I'm envisioning too, like help me just like I'm thinking you're in the house. Am I sitting in the chair and you're like, you're just bringing things into me? And I'm like, yes, no. Like, how does that work?
So it really depends on the client. A lot of
Okay.
we work with enough dynamos that are like, I'm going to be in there and I'm going to get, you know, my fingers dirty too.
Okay.
And we have people that need to sit, you know, in the space and process. Like it really just depends on, again, the person. And so, yeah, it's all about their mental bandwidth in terms of yes, no, maybes, you know. But how much they want to jump in with us is completely up to them, which is actually what makes it fun too. And sometimes the adult age children are there and they're on site with mom and they're doing a lot of cheerleading with us and encouraging with us. And sometimes they're not as handy as, one would think. And so that's okay too. You know what I mean? Families are complicated. No, that is not rocket science, right? And so it really just depends. It just depends on the client. My very first client, has since passed away. She would have been in her 100s. And her daughter, I will never forget this. She loved to shop. And so I created a runway for all of her clothing. I was like, come on, we're going to do this walkway. We're going to just have some fun with this. And she had all these leather jackets, and I told her she couldn't keep all of them. And she told me to eat my heart out. But what was the best? Oh, and she would always go, but I look as cute as Christmas.
My God.
It's the best. And I was like, yeah, Dot, you still can't keep it. But anyway, when her daughter would come into the room, she tried to keep everything. And her daughter knew, like, it was so funny, the dynamic. And I was
not
like,
helpful though, daughter, not helpful.
I was like, go back to the pool. She's like, okay, I'll see you later. You know what I mean? She was totally aware of their dynamic in that way and knew that she needed a professional to help her in this process because of the family dynamics.
Okay.
And that would be my advice too for so many families is it's like you hire a professional mechanic to fix your car. You hire a tax person to handle your taxes, and why wouldn't you hire somebody that can help you maintain your family relationship, especially for this next chapter? It's really hard to explain that to people. But I've seen it 700 times to know. I mean, and memory care moves are a whole nother animal that means so much to me because I have had memory care clients. We've moved them completely over. And then they're like, wow, it's a real shame you're going to move this space. And I'm like, it looks like home. You know what I mean? And you're like, we did our job,
Did your job.
But sometimes it really helps to have those adult age children care for their loved ones on the day of a move. We want you to focus on mom and dad. We want you to take them to lunch. We'll take care of the stuff while you take care of your person. I think that's a really valuable thing, in this process, or just to be able to offer support. So one of the other things we do, I didn't talk about that when we started doing this locally, it was like, okay, how can I help more people? Because some people are going to hire a senior move manager and some people aren't. They're just gonna be like, I'll take care of it. I'm going to help my mom and dad. So Luke and I, my husband, we were thinking, okay, how can we help as many people as possible outside of our little tiny but mighty team? And that was why we created this resource called Downsizing Done Right. And that is where we help whole families, adult age children, help their loved ones in this transition. And we give them the wherewithal to, as I like to say, look with a lens of love and make this the most calm, stress-free transition as possible, for this life transition, that they're experiencing. I did just kind of pull in that, like, I want to help as many people as I can, Amy.
So this is like I can just access it online.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a tutorial for me. If I say I'm not going to hire, because maybe cost is a concern.
Yes, absolutely.
And so if I say we're going to have to do this ourselves, this is going to give me a really good, basically a timeline and a step-by-step. What do I do? Oh, that's so fantastic. Okay.
Well, and the thing of it is, it's 3 parts because it's 3 modules, and you can have a cup of coffee and you watch it, but the first module is about the psychological help. And it's about how to really approach your loved ones in this scenario. If you can kind of let go of the baggage or the dynamic and all those things, and you want this to be a positive experience, here's sort of the setup, the foundation. Okay. Then it talks about a little bit about how to find the right place for your loved one, and the experts, to kind of talk to you in that process. But then it's like I like to say the glorified wedding planner, then it's the to-do list. Here's what we do 3 months out. Here's what we do 6 weeks out. Here's what we do 2 weeks out. Here's what we do the week of the move. And then it tells you exactly what to do. And now we're also available. So not only is it this online resource, they reach out to us when they're ready and we get in touch with them, and we're there on the phone as the Songbird support, because they're gonna, they need it. And it's an important thing.
I think that's wonderful that you created it. I love, especially, of course, knowing you, that you put the psychology piece first, which I is so good to hear, because people need to pay attention to that and understand this is not an easy process. It's a very difficult pill to swallow. Let's acknowledge that. Now, here's some tools to help you through it. So we're going to put a link to that for sure, to access it in the podcast notes, because I think that's a great resource for people that if they can't necessarily, maybe they don't have a moving company like yours in their area, or they don't have the financial resources to actually pay for that entire process. This is a good resource for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
We've tried to make it so affordable, for people, because it's so important. I'm so passionate about it. And the relationship is the most important thing in this process. And if you can't work with an outside party, I just want everyone to have the means, the tools to make this a positive experience,
Okay. So let's say though, I do want to hire you.
Okay.
To clean out my basement. Just kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's talk
Yep.
about though, if I'm looking at that from my parents, give us I know that it's hard to probably estimate the cost, but I think I would like people to understand roughly what to expect as far as how much this investment could cost them. So could you give us an idea of that?
Yes. First and foremost, the consultation that I do with families, if it's online, say I talked to a woman in New Jersey yesterday. We did a FaceTime call, we're doing a FaceTime call and we're talking and looking through spaces and stuff like that. Or if I'm in person locally, obviously in the Columbus metropolitan area, we go to the space for free. We just do an hour consultation where we can actually see the space, because as you can imagine, everyone has a different idea of how much stuff they have, right? So, and to be totally honest, people are like, my mom's a hoarder. And I'm like, well, just hold on. And then I go and I look and I'm like, your mom's not a hoarder. She's just from the Depression era and she has kept lots of things. She's a collector of things. It varies. Or I have people that call me and they're like, I don't want you to see my space. I'm so embarrassed. And usually those people, they don't have that much stuff. They're like super clean freaks, and it's totally great. So the consultation is so important, because not only is it free, but it really gives me a sense, because we charge hourly for our time. So, and that's why we charge hourly. I have prospective clients that'll call, that'll say, I have a 1,000 square feet basement. How much will this cost? And I'm like, how much is it? Floor to ceiling? Is it minimal? Can you see the floor? Like, everybody's different, if we have the resources that everything's donatable, we'll make that all happen. So we charge hourly for our time plus our vehicle and supply usage. We do direct bill back on. But if it's all junk and it really has not been loved and should not really be, we don't want to take donations, for example, that someone wouldn't be able to keep their dignity. They're like, oh, one person's trash is another person's treasure. I disagree with that. I think that humans deserve to feel loved no matter where they're at in life. And I'm not going to give something that's been totally destroyed as an end table by a dog or a cat or whatever and hand that over to a donation center and expect them to be able to sell that. I don't think that's fair. So, if a junk removal company, for example, needed to be contacted, that's less of our time and it's usually more efficient. The cost can really vary, Amy. It is so hard. People are like, oh, it's going to cost an arm and a leg, well, yeah, sometimes it has been expensive. And that's really hard for people too, because I understand that they're paying us to remove something that they paid for. And that is tough on people, but it's really important, again, to kind of do the right thing and not just leave it for the next person, for example. That's not okay either.
Or your
Um,
children. I mean,
yeah,
I think that's the thing that I love is what you said. I mean, it's one thing we used to say too in home care is let us do the things that let you be the daughter,
yeah,
that let you be the son. So if you're taking that burden away from them, so like you said, just take them out to lunch for the day while we get their room set up at the assisted living facility or independent living facility, and then bring them back, after you've spent a whole day together as mother and daughter. How wonderful is that? Where I would just think that they feel this immense relief of just, I can't believe someone just did all of this for us. And yes, you have to pay. I mean, nothing's free. So I think that if you are fortunate enough that it's something that you can manage in your budget, I I don't know why you wouldn't do it, because it is just because, like you have said so many times, just the emotional aspect of this stuff alone. Because I can in my head picture you've probably got the children are there and they're probably bickering. Well, I want this, or I want my son to have that, and if you can take that away, oh my goodness, what a gift for families.
I think too, what happens a lot is that it's their childhood home. It's the house that they grew up in. And so they're processing that grief, to be totally honest, as well. And maybe it's not grief. Maybe they're like, whew, finally, but a lot of times it's like, I have been in homes that the bedrooms are still decked out in their varsity cheerleader, decor, and they're in their 60s. The adult age children are in their 60s and they're like, I can't believe this is still my bedroom. There was something you said that I thought was so poignant, about the other thing, if it is their childhood home, they managing this move. I'm thinking about walkways. They may not be in a walker right now, but they could have a hip replacement coming up. I am thinking about, honestly, I know I'm going to nerd out, but the neurotransmitters in their brain that are telling them via muscle memory where their cups are in their kitchen. We literally consider that in their previous space, and we try and set it up as closely as possible in their new space so that they're like, well, wait a minute, what do you mean you're going to set up my kitchen? How will I know where anything is? Trust your body, and we leave post-it notes up. It's no big deal, but like, trust that things are in the places that you would assume they are, because we try and emulate that as much as possible in that kitchen transfer. Same with the bathroom, same with the closets. And adult age children are just like, we got to get mom in there. And so often adult age children are like, don't take the ugly chair. I want that floral chair. It matches so much better. And I'm like, dad sits in the ugly chair
Every
every
day.
day.
You're
We're
making
taking
me cry. I mean, I just am like, I'm so touched that you make it that personal for them, because I just think it's, we saw this over as you do. I think the adult children, I get that we're very busy. We're in the sandwich generation. We're still raising kids. We're worrying about our parents, but they matter. And like, you're treating them with such dignity and respect that I'm truly touched by that, because I think that is just phenomenal that you are making this as easy as possible. It's not an easy thing to move, but you're making it as painless as possible. And I just think that is really such a gift that you're offering these families. So I'm just so impressed. I really am. I'm so impressed by what you're doing and how you're doing it. So that's helpful. The cost basically, as you're saying, it could vary. And you probably are, I'm guessing you do that free assessment. Then you figure out, okay,
and
what are
then
we
we
talking about?
yes, yeah.
Okay. And then
And
are you giving them a good estimate at that time of like what you think it's going to be around in this range?
we'll
Okay.
give and what we tend to do is we try and give an estimate for if the house is full, because then sometimes they're like, my kids are going to come and they're going to take care of A, B, and C. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll give you an estimate for everything, and if you take care of it, it's just less time for us. which is my ideal estimate is like, we're going to overestimate and come in way under,
Yay!
Yay, win-win, I would rather that, because I have come into homes, maybe I can count on my hand in the last 9, 10 years, of the people that are like, my daughter's coming. She's going to pack everything. You don't have to do anything. And I'm like, okay, no problem. Don't even have job supplies in the truck, vans. We should come in, and I show up and nothing is done. And that's that. We've just gone from super calm, cool, and collected to panic mode. And that is the least ideal situation for somebody who's about to do this move. And it happens, it happens. So it's better for us to kind of plan for all of it and then, proceed.
I'm looking at you though. You seem like you would be inside. You might be going, "Oh my gosh!" But externally, you're like, "No problem."
Yep.
B, right? Is that what you're like?
Totally. I'm just like,
looks like yeah.
And then I like go see the team. I'm like, guys.
I mean, and you're right. It's going to happen. Okay, I do want to talk about hoarding. So I get that you get people that I'm sure they think mom's a hoarder. I agree with you, but I've also been in houses.
Yeah.
It was a hoarding situation. Yeah. And so I'm just curious. I'm assuming you still help those people, and it's just going to take a little longer. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yeah, I think that the hoarder psychology is an animal, in and of itself. There are value, this is valuable, or, this, I have a use for this. I mean, a lot of times it's related to having a use for said item, which is where the accumulation comes from, right? And I'm not an expert. I'm not a psychologist. I am not a pro as it relates to the training that it takes to really work with a hoarder. I'm just a problem solver for those folks. And so I think that's where we come back to this idea of like, I'm going to help you find the things you want to keep. Let's not focus so much on what I'm making you get rid of. Especially in a downsizing transition. I think so often, for example, there's one client that comes to mind that a lot of our clients are collectors of certain things. Sometimes that collection can get out of hand, right? So in this instance, it took a lot of time to clear out an entire basement full of what was thought to be useful, and something that you could build, down the road. And that gentleman wept when we cleared a space, essentially. And he handed us an axe. I kid you not. He handed us an axe and he goes, I hope you never have to deal with anything like this ever again. He finally felt free of this stuff. And it was beautiful and hard, and there's a lot of like reality checks, I think, that have to happen in that situation. But I think that with hoarders too, it goes back to like, there needs to still be dignity and integrity. And we're all just people doing our best. That's like my favorite thing my grandma used to always say. She's like, well, they're just doing their best. We're just doing our best. And my best might look different from your best, but they're still just doing their best, and it's that empathy and compassion that fuels me. Human connection is everything to me. I think that we need to be kind to each other. I wish the world was more kind, for darn sure. But I think if we all could be a little bit more kind, then the entire process, any hurdle we're jumping, right, can be achievable.
And
right?
Give each other grace. I think the grace, and just like your grandmother's wisdom, it's so true. They're doing the best they can do. And we have to just recognize that that's just might be different than your definition, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Right.
And I think, so the hoarding, what I'm curious about, because I've definitely had families ask me, like, what do? I don't even know where to start with her. I don't want to overstep. I don't want to upset her. But in my head, I'm thinking, this is going to become your problem if you don't start proactively doing something. You're going to be handling this, which is, I mean, that's the reality. So I guess what I'm curious about is in the cases that you've worked with in people that are hoarding, is it, I mean, knowing a little bit about it, I don't see how they're going to let you do this without them being present.
But the best thing to do is to move first.
Right? Okay, I totally agree with you. Now, let me ask this. What if someone's contacting you and they're not moving mom yet, but they want to start cleaning out just to make it safer, right? She's got a walker now. We need to have that space. Have you had that situation and how did you handle it?
So that's where, again, you start in the spaces that people aren't living normally. Do you know what I mean? So like that, the basement, you get to the attic, the basement, the garage, places that, and in this case, like physical safety, you eventually want to get to those spaces where they're living, but you also need to make them aware and experience that it is okay. They are psychologically okay to purge. And so in that scenario, I would absolutely recommend starting in places that they don't spend time in, even though that seems like counterintuitive. Like, let's just close this door and not worry about it. It's like, actually, no, that might be the best way to kind of make some headway.
You're opening the door to it
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
without,
And making them realize the thing that they really needed to keep is not necessarily needed because they don't miss it hypothetically. You know what I mean? In terms of that, everything I do is about habits of daily living, not habits of daily wishful thinking living. Okay. So I had a wonderful conversation with a woman yesterday, out of state, and she really, really wants to move a grand piano. And I said, "Oh, okay, no problem. We can manage that. How often do you play?" And she said, "Oh, oh."
oh, I don't play.
Honestly, I actually thought we laughed about this because I thought she was going to say, "Oh, I play every day," and instead she goes, "Oh, I never play." And because I was like, "Oh, that's amazing. You're a musician." Like I was preparing, for this compliment, and I was like, "Oh, wait, what? Did you just say you never play the piano?" And she's like, "No, I would like to play again someday." And I said, "Okay, um, that's fine. We can make space for this. We can put this into your floor plan. You do have the room, but I want you to spend some time about thinking about, will you actually approach this piano, or is it just going to be a visual sculpture, in your space?" I have clients that used to sew, used to knit. Um, that's great. Did you know there's a knitting group or a sewing group and a quilting group in the senior community, and they have supplies, or can we put those supplies there instead of taking up space in your apartment? I have clients that want to make a second bedroom because their children come to town once a year. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of square footage to give up for a hypothetical. Let's ask your adult age child, if they want to stay in a hotel or if they would like to stay in the community's, like, try it stay quarters and rent the room, or then you can accommodate them and you get to still have an office or your quilting, craft room, or like your piano room, if you really truly spend your time that way. And so for me, it's always about functional habits of daily living versus that, well, I'd like to do this
Yeah.
someday.
So what I'm guessing you already obviously know the facilities where you're moving people. And if you don't, I'm guessing you're checking it out, you're measuring, yeah. Okay. So you've got your layout. How do you do that?
That goes back to that very initial consultation, because I get a sense for who those people are. Right within an hour, you can understand where people spend their time. You look for the worn chair, you look for the desk that they have coffee at and read the paper at in the morning. So I'm already making a list. And I am of the, maybe not the popular opinion about measuring. I like to just count number of pieces in a space. Um, it's it's important. I think you can get really creative with a layout all day, but I think if you get down to the must-haves, the must-have list, and so the must-have list is, a bedroom. Obviously, you need a place to sleep. We need a place to watch TV, or what are we doing, every day? How often do you have guests? How many chairs or couches do we need to accommodate in the space? It's really quite small, the must-have list. Then the maybe list, which is where people are debilitated and overwhelmed. The maybe list is massive, that I'd like to have this. I want to do this. I mean, all of the possibility lives in this like giant maybe circle. And the no's, those absolute no's, those places where we can get started and make a dent and like make people feel really good about clearing, that is again smaller, like the must have list. So in terms of space planning, I just focus in on those things. And then I'm like, we can fill in the gaps with all the things that make them feel like they're home, afterwards. Does that make sense?
It makes a ton of sense. And I love it because I love that you're truly trying to make it their space, like what works for them and what they absolutely need. Like I think about my father-in-law's like lift chair. Like there's no way we're not having the lift chair. Like you got to do that. But you may not need the reading nook stuff that no one has sat in
Yes.
ever. So it looks nice, but it might not have space in here. So I love that you're helping them decide that. It's so great. And I knew, but I guess I didn't know how emotional and how like the psychology of this is the most important thing. I mean, bottom line, like it's such a difficult thing to process that I can't live in this space anymore, or I probably shouldn't. I can't maintain it. It's getting overwhelming. It's not as clean as it used to be, or the yard doesn't look like it used to when I was so good outside. And those things are really hard to swallow. And it just sounds like you acknowledge those things for them and just help them realize. I mean, I really like what you said earlier about I want to help them focus on living.
Mm-hmm.
Because I agree, like this is, even though you're entering a different chapter in your life, it doesn't mean that you can't embrace it and, love your new environment and meet new friends and feel like, oh my gosh, I'm actually happier than I thought I would be in this space without all the headaches that I had at the house. And it does it, it's a good decision, but it's just a really tough one to get there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's so hard to kind of explain it, to your point. Like, it's so hard to explain how they could, like, might be feeling once it's all done. It's so hard to explain that this is going to be a good process. Just trust me. Let me get started. Do you know what I mean? And people have a really hard time understanding how quickly we work. That is, as we create an estimate and we're like, this is going to be quite a few hours, a few days of work. And they're like, wow, I didn't think of it that way. But then we start working, we show up and we're like busy bees. I mean, we're like hummingbirds. There we go. Songbirds, hummingbirds, like, and they're like, and then it clears because we clear things. We don't leave stuff. We clear things same day. And they're like, whoa. I mean, I know you said it at the consultation, but I had no idea that it was going to really be this quick, or, um, rapid fire, if you will.
I like the hummingbird. I would love to know. I love on your social media when you share the thank you notes that you get.
Uh,
Can you tell us? I know that's hard, a loaded question. I still have like a file at home of all. Yeah, I can't get rid of them because it's like when you're feeling sad for some reason. If you could just read, you just are. So tell us like one of the most heartfelt ones you received, or something that was just, I don't know, no one had ever told you before that just meant so much to you.
well, first of all, I just love when people are willing to send me a love note with a paycheck. You know what I mean? Like,
I know. I know.
that's like the best compliment. I'll say what, actually, I'll do the opposite. Sorry, but I'll say what people say to me in a thank you that keeps me going,
Okay.
and that is like, we never could have done this without you. And that's why we exist. Like, that's why I wanted to create this business. And that's why Luke and I just believe in it so wholeheartedly. it's it is like a gift. It's such a hard thing to like explain to people too, because it is a life transition. Like this is not just a move. Um, we this senior living isn't what it used to be. Do you know what I mean? Like we have this idea that, okay, things are going really badly and now we just need to make a shift and that's where they're going to live for their end of days. And it's like, no, this is like, this is an opportunity to set your loved one up, especially for sandwich caregivers that are trying to manage their own families and their mom and dad or loved ones. Like you could basically catapult them into a successful, you know, third 30, if you will, you know, or chapter in this life. And it's the best is actually, you know, the thank you notes are amazing from the adult age children. They're usually funny. They usually say something funny about what we've done or how we've accomplished it. Because I do truly feel like we become extended family with them too. I've had clients be like, "You're the sister I never had," you know, and I'm like, "Let's do this," you know. But it's the best to see clients at the others, like once we've already moved them and we're moving another resident in, and they see our vans and our box trucks, and they're like, "Songbird's here," and we're just like, "Yes," you know. And I get to go hug everybody and see them thriving, or, you know, it's just such a beautiful thing. It really is.
You are not just a moving company.
Thank you.
I mean, you're that anyone can say that. So you have given us such great advice here. So it's basically can't call too early. You're going to charge hourly. It's okay to also get you involved, even if the move isn't even happening yet.
Yeah.
But it
Aging
is
in place. Sorry
no,
for aging in place. That's what we're talking about. Like, let's get those things going too, so you don't have to deal with them later, you know. So,
yes.
go
So
ahead.
no, that's super helpful. I think that you know, obviously your resource that we're going to link to in the podcast notes is going to be enormously helpful for people who wouldn't necessarily be able to hire someone. Or let me ask this too, I guess, if somebody is, you know, in a different state, not near our central Ohio area, what is it that you say is the best, I would say, term that you should search on the internet to find somebody like you?
Yeah. So there's you could do senior move management,
Okay. Senior move management.
senior
Okay.
downsizing, you
Okay.
know. Um,
We'll include that too in our notes.
yeah, those
Okay.
and sometimes it's tricky, you know. You want to, and you it's so important to do a consultation because there are a variety of people. I'm not the only person, you know, out there that does this work. There are really really good humans that do this work, but there are also people that are motivated differently, you know. And I think finding the right fit for this transition is what I'm so passionate about, because I think it needs to be really positive and uplifting. um, you don't want somebody who's going to sit there and cry with you while you're purging stuff. You want someone to focus on the positives, um, and make it an uplifting, happy, even funny.
Oh, you
You know?
girl, God gave you so many gifts, but you are using your best ones because you are nothing but a ray of sunshine, and you're doing this for the right reasons. You know, you're not doing this the money's not your focus. Your focus is, I truly want to enhance this next stage of their life, and I'm going to make this as, you know, just as great as it can be, which I mean, girl, I just admire you. And I really think that you are doing something special. And I love your approach. I love how you're handling these families, and just the way that you treat them is so special. And it's a gift. So well done that you're using your gifts.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to even chat. I'm nerding out. I'm like, this is so fun to
It's
talk about.
fun. Well, we could talk for hours. I would say before we wrap up though, is there anything else that you would share that's good advice, or anything you think we left out that people need to be considering here?
You know, a friend of mine told me this, and it's a good thing, a food for thought to close on, you know, is that we usually have a limited amount of space. You know, we're we have walls that we fit in, but we have an infinite amount of space in our hearts. And I think that that's important. That is where we keep our love, and that's where we keep our empathy and our compassion. And that's way more valuable than stuff. That's why I got to write a book. Amy, I got to write a book about it.
You're going to write a book because you have so many skills and so much knowledge, which is why I started the podcast too, where I felt like I want to just help people. I want to figure out, there's things that people are trying to tackle and they don't know who to talk to. And this is what we're doing. We're having these conversations, but any resources that you could give people like that would help them. I think we're all desperate for that. We need it. We need more of the emotional side of it, in my opinion. There's a lot of the medical jargon, which I'm not saying we don't need, we do, but people have to understand that this stage and all the things that people are navigating is so emotionally challenging on many fronts. And I do agree with you that, like, let's lead with the heart. Let's figure out, everybody's going to process these things differently, but let's treat each other like knowing, okay, I see what's important to you. That may not be what's important to me, but it's important to you. So we're going to make that happen. And it's a huge part of this, which is why I know you're so successful. So, and I just adore you. I think you're a ray of sunshine. I can't thank you enough for everything you just shared with us. And we'll make sure we put in the notes about what to search on the internet, but downsizing done right.
That's right.
Okay.
Nailed it.
Link to it. I adore you. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you.
Everything. You were so great today, and I appreciate you.
The feeling is totally mutual.
Okay. Thanks so much, Sam.
Bye.
That's a wrap for today's episode of The Care Table. Thank you so much for joining me. If you found this information helpful, would you like, subscribe, write a review, or share this episode with someone that you feel could benefit from hearing this information? I'd sure appreciate it. If you learned of anything during this podcast as far as books, resources, or products that you might think are helpful, be sure to check out the podcast show notes for links to access that information. A friendly reminder that this is not medical or legal advice. This is just information. Consult a professional for your own personal situation. I ask that God would bless you with the wisdom, the courage, and the strength that you need as you're navigating this caregiving journey. And I want to remind you, you are not alone. I appreciate you joining us today. And until next time, stay strong. And I hope to see you at the Care Table.